Hello and welcome. This is One Voice here on Asia One with me, Craig Vermey. In today's show, it's 1 month since Colombia's deeply divisive presidential runoff. The country remains politically tense as president-elect prepares to take office on August the 7th. His narrow election victory has been officially certified and left-wing rival has accepted the result. But outgoing President Petro has continued to rally support with mass protests, fiery speeches warning against the incoming administration. President-elect has promised a dramatic change of direction, ending peace negotiations with armed groups, dismantling key institutions linked to Petro's total peace strategy, and replacing them with a tougher security-focused approach. He has also pledged a major cut to government spending and smaller state and stronger policing, while signalling support for expanding oil and gas exploration to boost the economy. Financial markets have reacted positive to the announcements, and critics warn that the sharp political divide and security challenges could make Colombia come under the spotlight for human rights issues. To look at this with me is Sergio Ubre-Henao, political analyst. Sergio, thanks for joining me. Look, it's 1 month on since this runoff. What's the current state of play at the moment?
So we are around 2 weeks from the new president, Abelardo de la Espriella, coming into office. And right now what we see is he is building his cabinet. He is supposedly trying to build a cabinet that is a bit with new fresh blood, that isn't beholden to the normal traditional political parties that Colombia has had rule for the past 20 to 30 years. And what you're seeing is there's a little bit of the new fresh blood, but there's also the same representation of parties. The politicians that have served previous presidents in their cabinets as well. And so while you're seeing the new president, the president to be putting his cabinet together, you're also seeing fights already accumulate in the Congress, where his political party is actually very underrepresented. There's only 4 representatives and senators in the House and in the Senate. So the president is coming in without a big legislative mandate. And if you look at the polling, if you look at the election results from last month, he's coming with a very strong presidential election mandate as well. And so Abelardo de la Espriella, despite coming in as a new force outside of the normal traditional political arena in the same traditional political parties, he's coming in with a new platform, something that is intended to shake the country up, but without really the tools necessary to put that into place. So there's going to be a lot of negotiation with political parties on the right, on the center right, that aren't of his political party and his political movement, but perhaps they have a lot in common to work with. But so the situation right now is that he's trying to put together this team. It's not necessarily the team that he promised of full fresh blood. And also we're already seeing some conflicts in the Congress as he tries to put his platform together and move forward.
Mm-hmm. So his political rivals have accepted that he won at the polls, but there's the former president, Petro, is causing trouble. So how is that affecting moving forward?
Absolutely. So as you said, they have accepted the results of the election. But if we go back a month ago and remember how it was, an immediate recognition of the results were a lot closer than people were expecting, than analysts that I was expecting as well. And so you see the historic pact party that is led by the current president who's leaving office, Gustavo Petro, and the candidate that they had in last month's election, Ivan Cepeda, who will now take a place in the Senate representing the opposition, you really have seen them create a very confidently and strong opposition to this incoming government. Like I said, it took them around a week to accept the results of the election. They wanted the official vote count announced before accepting the results. And also, they've already expressed the desire to be a strong opposition that not only does opposition in the legislative sphere, but that also goes to the streets and to try to block with manifestations, with protests, block a lot of the proposals that the incoming government will be pushing forward. So Abelardo de la Espriella, while also not having a strong support in Congress, he has a very strong opposition already represented by the left-wing Historic Pact Party.
So exactly on that point, not a lot of power in government. Is he going to be able to get anything done?
I do believe so. Colombia has a history and has a tradition of these traditional political parties really being flexible and working with an incoming administration. You have a lot of traditional parties that are less ideological, and what they are is more these views for power. And what you'll have certain parties more in the center do is they know that the incoming government needs their votes in order to pass their legislation. And so they're willing to provide the support needed in order to move these things forward. And as I said previously, with this new cabinet that's being formed, Abelardo de la Espriella has picked politicians from some of the big traditional parties in the center, or in the center right, rather. And in order to get their support in Congress, he's putting those people ahead of his ministries. And so that's a little bit of the critique you could say of Abelardo de la Espriella, saying that he wants a government of new blood, of not of the same political families and the same political movements. But in order to pass his legislation, he's going to have to work with these same parties, which he seems to be doing at the moment.
So this is what he's working at in this period, from election to the 7th of August. He's really behind the scenes to build alliances. Has anybody come out strongly in favour to help him, or is he still working hard to build these?
So you can say that he definitely has a base there. You have two political parties that are larger than his own, and his is called the Movement of National Salvation. And like I said, they have a very marginal positions. They're not a new party, but they're a very minor party. And he has two parties, specific three depending on how you count. The Democratic Center Party, which ironically is a right-wing party, and that is of the previous right-wing president Álvaro Uribe. And basically, Colombia, since the early 2000s, the Colombian right has really been led by Uribe in his movement, the Democratic Center movement. And what you see with Abelardo de la Espriella is an ascendant right-wing politician who just won the presidency. And he did so in the first round going against the Uribista candidate, Paloma Valencia, and he crushed her numbers entirely. And in the second round, he won the election with the helping of this traditional right-wing Uribista movement. Now, there's been friction between the two. As you can imagine, you have an ascendant right-wing movement being in conflict with this more diminished right-wing movement that has governed the country, that has led the country for the past 20 years. So just yesterday, in fact, or the day before, there was the vote on who would be the president of the Congress for the first year of this new 4-year period. And there was a candidate that the new president wanted, and there was the candidate that the Uribista faction, the Democratic Center, was proposing. And with that first conflict, you saw the Uribista candidate actually come out on top. And you saw the first major legislative defeat of Abelardo de la Espriella, which was losing the presidency of the Congress for the first year. Now, I don't know what long-term effects that will have, but it is definitely a symptom of the fact that Abelardo de la Espriella does not have this consolidated, ready-to-go legislative majority, despite the fact that a lot of parties are on the right or center right and would be willing to help. He's going to have to work in order to continuously get their support.
Mm-hmm. So there's been quite a lot of talk about total peace. So is he able to deliver?
So this total peace framework came from the current president, who's leaving office. Gustavo Petro proposed this idea of total peace, which was this failed attempt, frankly, of simultaneously negotiating peace agreements with all of the different insurgent groups in the country. Now, the the security situation in the country deteriorated during this attempt.
Because he's also said that he wants to end it, hasn't he?
He wants to end.
Is it possible? Yeah.
Is it possible? I believe it definitely will be possible. I think when it comes to one thing in particular that Abelardo de la Espriella does have credibility on, does have political capital on, is the security question. Now, if we look at Abelardo de la Espriella, the new incoming president, he kind of is a mixture between Bukele and El Salvador, the security policies of Bukele, the economic policies of Javier Milei in Argentina, and the cultural and populist campaigning methods of President Donald Trump in the United States. And if there's one area that I think Abelardo de la Espriella does have an advantage on, it's in security policy. He's going to be able, the Colombians really voted for him because of the deteriorating security situation in the country. And I think this is going to be an opportunity for him to really mark a difference between the past administration that failed on that front.
So what's he offering instead?
He's offering a much harsher crackdown on criminal groups within the country. Instead of negotiations, instead of this strong focus on human rights, which we saw from this government that's closing currently, we're going to see a lot more of a military focus, a lot more of a cooperation with the United States when it comes to security standards and attacks on the drug cartels. This happened before in Colombia. Colombia has a history of groups and the government really taking the fight to them. And the former president that I previously mentioned, Álvaro Uribe, from the first 8 years of the 21st century, he really had a harsh crackdown approach. And there were a lot of critiques of human rights during that time. And that is a question that really worries a lot of people that supported the other candidate in this election, that human rights is going to be more diminished with the new incoming government. And it will be, frankly, a question on, as long as we get the security situation under control, human rights will be on the back burner.
Colombia is entering a new political era as President-elect prepares to replace Gustavo Petro on August the 7th. The transition has been marked by protests, sharp political rhetoric, and a growing debate over security and the economies and the future of the country's peace process. To help me understand what is happening and how it matters is Sergio Ubre, our political analyst, and thanks for staying with us. So,
absolutely.
Something you said before we went to the break, and you mentioned America in your last answer, how is looking at some Trump policies and everything. Was America a player in this election?
I would say President Trump was a player in this election. As President Trump has had the tendency to do, he came out in favor of Abelardo de las Espriella, the winning candidate of the election, weeks before with his official endorsement. So, and also, President Trump has been a player in Colombian politics in this second term and also in his first term. But especially in this second term, he and the current president, Gustavo Petro, the left-wing president, they have really clashed. Now, they've met in person, and in person it seemed that that relationship was a little more cordial, but really these two players, this left-wing president from Colombia and this, President Trump in the United States, they really are from different opposite ends of the political spectrum, and their animosity towards each other have benefited each other as well. Now, to answer directly your question, I think the support that Trump gave Abelardo de la Espriella was probably more of an anchor to the incoming president in Colombia than a boost of support. And I think this is because there is a tendency in Latin America to be very wary of American participation and overreach within the Latin American countries. And this is probably something that really came into play in the final weeks of the election.
So do you think Colombia has looked at what happened in Venezuela with Maduro and thought, let's keep Trump as a friend, we're better to have him on our side?
I think there are different sectors of the country that view America's involvement and Trump's America's involvement in different ways. There's definitely a base of Colombians who see the chaos that Venezuela has had within the country, the internal domestic toil, and they view favorably America's involvement to try to curb the migration coming from that country, to stomp out really the criminal gangs that perhaps go across the border. So there is a sector of the country that welcomes this and want to see a closer relationship between Bogota and Washington, D.C. And at the same time, as I mentioned, there is also a sector of the country that's very wary of this American involvement.
So let's turn our attention back to internal matters and some promises that were made. Now, the president-elect said he's going to cut bureaucracy by about 40%. I mean, that's a big number. Is this something that he could even head a little way down the track to?
I think there's going to be attempts. One of the focuses that he has articulated to his new cabinet that has almost entirely been created is this focus of interdepartmental cooperation and making sure that everyone's working towards the same goals. And I think that kind of speaks to the efficiency that he wants to see from government, coming from, as he says, coming from the business sector. So when you look at kind of politicians that have taken his approach, like President Trump, for example, or Milei, with Milei's attempts to cut Argentinian bureaucracy. I think this is something that Abelardo de la Espriella is going to hope to work on, but I think it's a sector where he's going to have a lot less success than the security side aspects of it. Because really, he did not get elected to reduce the Colombian state by 40%. He got elected to answer and to solve the security problems. And the country's bureaucracy, despite being a little inflated, it's not one of the major concerns of the country. And it's going to be something that would be very hard to pass with the legislative setup, the political setup of the legislature. Mm-hmm.
So if he does employ the military, he does crack down on crime. What capacity does Colombia have to incarcerate and hold these people without human rights concerns?
Well, I think that's the issue there. I don't think there is a reality where this happens without there being some human rights concerns. And I think that's basically just a cost benefit analysis for a lot of Colombians. Are we okay with having a stronger state, a stronger hand from the state on cracking down on insurgent groups and criminal gangs and drug trafficking organizations? And the cost of that would be a little violations of human rights. And I think for a lot of Colombians, that is a legitimate trade-off. For others, not so much. And so I think that will really be where the debate is held, where the protests on the street are held, spearheaded from the left opposition party of the current president, Gustavo Petro. So that's really what Colombia is going to be experiencing for the next year or so, as this administration really begins. Because
promising spending cuts, but having to build more prisons and pay the military, it's not adding up from where I'm sitting.
It doesn't add up, and at the same time, the outgoing government has left the country with a precarious budgetary situation as it is. And so the new president is coming in, yes, with business acumen, which a lot of his supporters point to, but there's going to have to be some tough decisions, especially when it comes to this government wanting to be a more business-friendly government, with foreign investment being a key pillar, big cooperation with the United States. And so perhaps the cooperation with the United States means some extra financial resources when it comes to the security situation. And there's already been a history of that between the United States and Colombia with the Plan Colombia of the 1990s and the 2000s. So I think that will be the major question when it comes to the fiscal situation. How will they actually be able to do so? And would the Congress allow him to proceed with some of his more radical proposals for the fiscal budget?
And there's sort of a renewed push for oil and exploitation, so that would also bring money back into Colombia.
And that will be a big 180-degree change from the last 4 years, where the outgoing really prioritized the attack of climate change, Colombia's place as a natural superpower, a country that really pushes above its weight when it comes to biodiversity, and with that discussion, how can Colombia get more tourism from having this natural reserve? So I think this will be a 180-degree change from the current administration when it comes to oil and gas exploration. Fracking was a major talking point during the campaign, and the current president and the incoming president is a big proponent.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what is the incoming president's relationship with neighboring countries? Is Venezuela, for instance, with quite a bit of turmoil in Venezuela recently, and quite a lot of cross-border human traffic across, not trafficked humans, but human traffic across that border, families on both sides.
Absolutely.
So how's his relationship, and where do we see that going?
So I think the question of Venezuela is still to be determined. Since Nicolás Maduro was detained by the Americans in January, we have seen the Venezuelan government try to work in closer cooperation with Washington, D.C. So I think as long as that relationship between Caracas and Washington is still being formed, I don't know what we'll really be seeing from Bogota and Caracas. I think there's room for cooperation, especially with American pressure on Venezuela, but that's still to be determined. Now, I think what's very interesting looking at the regional dynamics of this is that Abelardo de la Espriella is just the latest right-wing outsider president being elected from a wave of them that have washed over the region, the Latin American region. You saw in Ecuador, in Argentina, in Chile, in Bolivia. You have a lot of these different, countries, in Peru most recently as well. So you have a lot of right-wing, newly incoming presidents who are going to want to tackle the security situation, tackling the drug trade, and perhaps a collaboration can really help this on a more regional level as opposed to a more national level. So that will be quite interesting dynamic to see moving forward.
So what do you think his hurdles are going to be over the next 6 months?
I think he's coming in with high expectations, as an outsider candidate that really took the political world in Colombia by surprise, with his unique campaign style, his unique way of using artificial intelligence in his advertising, his unique way of really speaking to crowds, in a way unique and in a way very reflective of this strongman culture that you see in South and Latin America in general when it comes to presidential leaders. Now, these high expectations means a big potential for disappointment, and we see that with political systems all around the world, and especially coming in having promised so much, but also having very limited tools when it comes to the legislative front. I think Abelardo de las Espriella is going to be walking a tightrope, keeping this outsider label, while at the same time playing the political game that's needed in order to negotiate with the political parties that are willing to negotiate but would like something in return. And so I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle in the first year, is how he navigates that outsider label with also having to play the traditional political game that all political parties and all incoming presidents in Colombia have to deal with.
Thank you very much for your time today. And that brings me to the end of today's conversation, where I looked at the presidential runoff in Colombia. How 1 month on, since the closely fought election, political tensions remain high. As President-elect prepares to take office, he pledged sweeping changes, ending the peace talks with armed groups, cutting the size of government and strengthening security. While investors have welcomed his economic agenda, many Colombians fear the country faces more polarized political future. Thank you to Sergio Ubre Henao for sharing your insights. And as always here on One Voice, we aim to cut through the noise and bring you the stories that matter from the voices that know. And if you missed any part of today's show, be sure to go to our YouTube channel, Asia One News. Until next time, I'm Craig Vermey, and thank you for watching One Voice.